A new study suggests men should lower their standards on dating apps. This is just crazy. This study, although seemingly humorous, is entirely authentic and exists in reality. And not only that, it claims that we men have extremely high standards. We choose women who are way out of our league, and women, on the other hand, women have much lower, much more realistic standards. Pay attention. A study reveals why men need to lower their standards on dating apps. Look, here they also tell us that men should lower their standards on dating apps according to a new study. Oh my god. These days, there's a study for any nonsense. Here they tell us too. Men need to lower their standards on dating apps. That's the conclusion of a new study. For women, the gigachads who date 5 girls at the same time and keep switching them should lower their standards to give commitment to one sub-5 girl. And what about the other men? They're not men. They're just useful beings who maintain the infrastructure. They're little more than robots who have no needs or feelings. Guys, let's be clear about this. This study is ridiculous. We'll read and analyze it now, but it makes no sense. Obviously, women have much higher standards than men. In fact, women are the ones who have unrealistic standards in real life. They have absurd standards. And in practice, almost always, the ones who have to settle for very little are men. And let's remember the following. These men you're seeing on screen used to date these women. Yes, just as you heard, these men you're seeing on screen who are pretty decent men. Even men who work out, men who have a really good lifestyle, who are in great shape, used to date these women here. My god, what can I say? It's unbelievable and heartbreaking. While unfortunate and sad, this is the harsh reality. These women were canceling and making false accusations against all these men on an app in the United States called T-App. We've already talked about it. The app was hacked, and basically the data and photos of all the women who were sharing false information about these men were leaked. They did it because they felt hurt after the men went on a date with them but never contacted them again. Look, honestly, I think any of you wouldn't write to these shiny beings again, right? I mean, any man in his right mind after meeting one of these women would never write to her again. But well, obviously that made them furious and they started canceling and making up stories about all these men. Let's also remember that men, for example, in China, even went out with the red uncle, with Sister Hong. Dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of men ended up going out with this character. Just imagine the level of craziness. And then they come here trying to sell me that men have high standards? Please, not at all. Of course not. Under no circumstances. Men do not have high standards. It's quite the opposite. And now they do a study which is obviously based on nothing. To say that men have unrealistic standards and that we should lower our standards even more, it seems completely crazy and pointless to me. It's just nonsense. How can you ask men to lower their standards even more when men in China were with Red Uncle? I mean, man, do you want them to lower their standards even more? I mean, how much lower do men have to go? It's impressive. But anyway, let's see the following. A new study analyzes the behavior of dating apps in the Czech Republic. It reveals that men look for more desirable partners. God, what is the most desirable partner? That's a joke? We men look for similar levels of desirability. Let's see, so they're selling me that these women here are at the same level as these men. In fact, not only that, but these men were dating women who were more attractive than them? Is that really what they're trying to tell me? It's nonsense. Again, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. In fact, when you analyze Tinder's data, actual data, we can notice things like the following. What is the success rate for men on Tinder? 3%. In fact, it's 2.5%. What is the success rate for women? 35%, that is, women out of every like they send have a 1/3 chance that the man will like them back. Men with every like they give have a 3% chance. Actually, not a 3, a 2.5% chance that the woman feels the same way. I mean, men can spend hours, days, or even weeks without getting a single match on a dating app. That's the average man, just to give you an idea. Yes, there are men who get a lot of matches. That's true, it's a reality. There are men who get a lot of matches, who go on a lot of dates, who can talk to a lot of girls. But that's unlikely. I mean, that's very rare. The average man doesn't achieve that. A normal man doesn't get that, doesn't manage to do it. For an ordinary man to be able to get just one date, it's difficult, it's tough, it's complicated, he really struggles with it. In fact, just a few days ago, we discussed Hayden to give you an idea. A young man, 26 years old, who spent 5 years on Tinder, gave 2 million likes, and got only one date. Yes, just as you heard, 5 years on Tinder, 2 million likes, and only one date. This is a normal man, and look, he's not someone you'd say shouldn't get even a single match. So, who are the ones with unrealistic standards? Who are the ones whose standards are through the roof? The women, evidently. It's quite obvious, it's quite logical. In fact, it doesn't make sense to think that men have unrealistic standards. They don't. But anyway, the article tells us the following. For a long time, there has been a theory that on dating apps, 80% of women go after the top 20% of men. That's not a theory, it's a fact. But new research reveals that it's actually men who aim too high when they're swiping for love. Okay, if this research is true, then why 3% of men get matches and 35% of women manage to do exactly the same? Why? That's an interesting question, and this is data provided by Tinder itself, just imagine. But anyway, let's continue. International researchers who can't actually research anything analyzed the behavior of almost 3,000 users of a Czech dating app, and their findings were published earlier this week. Men tended to show interest in women who were more desirable than they were. Let's see, what do they base desirability on? That's something very important. Meanwhile, women generally pursued men with a more similar level of desirability. That's some finding. Oh my god. To rank how desirable each user was, the researchers counted the number of swipes they received from other people on the app. There were more male users, which means that female users generally ranked higher in this hierarchy. Despite having many options, the research revealed that women sometimes chose slightly less desirable partners on average. However, the study showed that successful matches tended to occur between people with similar levels of desirability. Oh please, sure. Are you going to tell me that these people had similar levels of desirability? Really? Seriously? Nonsense, really. It's just illogical. Therefore, to avoid feeling frustrated and rejected when using dating apps, research suggests that men should be realistic about their own attractiveness and not try to date out of their league. What criteria did the study use to define desirability? That's an interesting question. And that's where the big catch of this study is. I'm telling you right now. Because they're basically telling us that women chose partners who are a little less desirable on average. But according to them, desirability is based on how many times you're chosen. That is, how many times that man is picked and chosen by other women. Interesting, isn't it? Look, this already makes a lot of sense. This makes a lot of sense now. Think about it for a moment. Men, even on Tinder, even top names, even the top 10% of men can end up having fewer matches than an average woman. What does that mean? That according to this attempted study, a top 10% man would be less desirable than an average woman. He could even be less desirable than a below average woman. Because this man would be getting fewer matches, or receiving fewer likes than the woman. Now you're starting to understand, right? So that's what it's based on. It's completely crazy. It's complete nonsense. It's a pointless study that obviously plays with words just to, to reach this completely absurd conclusion. It's a ridiculous conclusion, I say. It makes no sense to me at all. How are you going to tell me that men should lower their standards? I mean, how? What standards? Men don't have standards. At least, for you know what? For a weekend, a man doesn't have any standards at all. It's that simple and straightforward. But what do you think about this so-called study? What do you think about this craziness? The world continues to surprise me. See you next time, everyone.